Hey, what's up everybody? My name's Adam. I'm the campus pastor out at our West Campus. So glad that you jumped in online with us today. We're in the middle of this series called Never Alone, where we're taking a look at the idea that God is like with us in everyday life, and He's like right here like a best friend, but in like the most non-creepy way possible. If you have any questions or if we can help you out with anything, you can hit us up on social media, or we've got a form online. We'd love to be able to answer any questions you have or help you take a next step to get connected around here. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Flatirons. Hey, welcome back. We're in part 5 of this series we've been on for the last month or so called Never Alone, where we've been, just to kind of catch up, we've been unpacking this idea or this concept called spiritual formation. Spiritual formation, it's this fancy word for a lot of us have been holding on to some ideas about God, about ourselves, about the world, that the kind of life is just handed to us, and that's where we've landed. We've been holding on to it because it makes sense. We're trying to replace those ideas the more we get to know Jesus with the thoughts and the ideas and the kind of the concepts that filled the mind of Jesus, the way that Jesus thought about God. I want to think about God that way. When Jesus thought about me, I want to think about me that way. When Jesus saw what was going on in the world, I want to think about the world the way that Jesus sees it. And one of these new ideas about living that kind of life with God is taking hold of this idea of not just living a religious life with God, but living everyday life with Him. All day long, like everywhere my body goes, everything I do, everything I say, the big stuff and then that mundane stuff, over and over, repetitive stuff that you do with your kids, that you do at work, that you do at the ball fields all week long. We want to take all those parts of our life and we want to live, and here's what we've been looking at. We want to live that with Jesus in what's called a conversational relationship. Not just talking to Him, but actually hearing from Him, and then taking all of the parts of our lives, the big ones and the little ones, and then putting them into this thing called the kingdom of God, right? So that eventually what we want done in our lives is the same thing that God wants done in our lives. The way Jesus said it is, here's what we're praying for. As it is in heaven, I want it to be done on earth, like in my life, like in my family, in my body, and in all the things that make up my real everyday life. And that's not easy. None of that comes easily. See, it's just like, we put God in a category of relationships, and I don't know why we do that, but just like every important relationship in my life, it just takes time, right? The way that I eventually married Robin is because I spent a lot of time with her, and the most significant people in your life. You went through life together. You shared experiences together, right? Good ones and bad ones, happy ones and painful ones, and eventually you became friends. You got to know one another. Right? You begin to trust one another. You begin to share the same mind. It's like we're thinking alike. We have the same goal and we want the same wants. And so this past week, we walked out of here last weekend, and if you weren't here, get online and catch up with us. But we have a training exercise each week that we're trying to kind of put into practice what we're learning inside, how to make its way onto the outside. And so our training this past week was to ask God to join us in whatever happens during that day, and then to do it together, right? Like ask God to come along through the day with me and point out stuff that it's mundane. I do it over and over and over. I don't even think about it, but God, will you come do life with me and then point out something in my everyday life that I might miss or write off, but you want to do something there. And you want to be a part of that, and you want to use me in that moment to bring you into whatever's going on in that situation. And the kind of like the 3 main areas of our life going, God, I want you to do life with me was our family and our close friends. We spend a lot of time with them, and when we're not with them, we're usually at work, right? Trying to earn some money and stuff like that. And then the other thing is that after work or before work, whatever that is, we have these things that we just enjoy doing, hobbies and fun activities that we fill up our free time. So we want to bring God into that and live everyday life in a conversational relationship with Jesus in those parts of our life. Now, again, over the last week, I've had conversations with several thousand of you through this thing called Twitter, which I'm doing my best, all right? So, but I put these training ideas out there every day, and I've heard some great stories back from some of y'all. It's like, I never thought about it like that. I normally would have missed that with my kids or with that person at work or a person in traffic or whatever that is, and I'm starting to actually think differently. My paradigm has shifted, and I'm actually living my day all day long, intentionally looking for what God might want to do in my life or might want to use me in somebody else's life. And that's been fantastic. I may keep going with that. I haven't decided yet. Check Twitter Monday, I guess. But I've also gotten some feedback that's honestly from some of you going, I'm trying, it's not working. I'm trying these exercises. I'm trying to, all these things we've been talking about at church. I'm trying to hear from God, and I'm just getting nothing. I mean, part of me, and this is what my fear was even trying this for myself, is part of me thinks I should just give up, either because there's something wrong with me and I'm not smart enough to figure this out, or there's something wrong with God. I don't know, but either way, it's not working. And some of us, the more time we've actually tried to spend with God, we feel more alone. Not never alone. We feel more alone. And that's what I want to talk about today. What happens when it feels like you're doing your best and you can't hear anything from God? You're trying and it's not working. So I want to look at a story of a man in the Bible. It's a pretty famous guy. His name is Elijah, and maybe you've heard of him before. He was a prophet that lived about 800 years before Jesus was even born, and he's probably most famous for this big face-off he had between some prophets of a false god named Baal, and then he was a prophet of the one true God, and so they kind of had a duel up on top of this mountain to see who had the real God. And so read this later. We're going to look at a different chapter, but this is in the chapters right before what we're going to look at today. But so there's these 400 prophets of Baal, and they go, we'll go first. And so they build this big fancy altar, and then they take this bull and they slaughter it and they lay it in all this particular way on top of that, all right? And then they start dancing around and jumping around and praying to their God to send fire from heaven and prove that you're the real God and consume this and everything. And it's not working because Baal's not real, all right? And this is one of the reasons I love Elijah so much is because he's heckling from the sidelines. He's actually standing there going, what's wrong with your God? Maybe he's on a trip. Yell louder. Maybe he can hear you. He actually goes. Maybe Baal's on the toilet. Maybe give him a minute and he'll come out. Or something like. I love the sarcasm of Elijah. But anyway, they just get madder and they start dancing around. They take knives and they start cutting themselves to prove how loyal they are to Baal, and nothing happens. And finally, they put up a white flag and says, "We're done." And then it's Elijah's turn. He goes, okay. So he builds an altar out of all these big rocks. He takes a bull, he puts it on it, cuts it up, arranges it all the right way. And then he says this, just douse the whole thing in water, which I think is kind of showing off personally, all right? Douse the whole thing in water. And then he just prays this one prayer, short prayer. It goes, God, just prove that you're the real God and do what you want to do. And in that moment, God sends fire from heaven and he burns up the bull and he burns up the wood and it even burns up all the rocks that everything was laying on. And Elijah's team wins. Elijah wins. It's a good day. And then Elijah looks at all these false prophets over there, and they're like, oh, no. And so he gets all his guys, and they chase them for several miles, and they slaughter all 400 of the prophets of Baal. And Elijah's feeling good. It's like, yay, God, my team wins. And it's a great story. It really is a great story to tell your kids at bedtime about how Elijah slaughtered all these men. All right, but anyway, but then in the next chapter, the story turns. Because the queen, who actually is a big fan of Baal, she finds out about what Elijah's done. She gets so angry, she sends a message to Elijah, by this time tomorrow, you're going to be like all those dead prophets. And she kind of puts out an APB on Elijah, kill on sight. And so Elijah finds out about this, and he takes off in the desert, and he's going to hide. And that's where we're going to pick up the story today. We're in 1 Kings, and again, there's free Bibles at all of our campuses, but the lighting's not very good in here, and the font it's like only like eagles can read it. So get us later, and it'll be here on the screen. So this is the later that day of what happened with Elijah up there on that mountain where God has this big victory. So we're going to pick up in 1 Kings chapter 19. He says this, and we're talking about Elijah, but Elijah himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And I assume that's just a tree, kind of looks like a broom, I don't know. All right? And Elijah asked, and so he's praying, all right? He asked that he might die, saying, it is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. Now here's what's happening here, okay? And see if you can relate to anything that Elijah might be feeling here. God has just done something amazing, right? Yesterday. He's done something great. He demonstrated how good and powerful he is. And in that moment, Elijah's feeling great. I'm on the right team. God is good. He's taking care of me. He's really demonstrated what a great God he is yesterday. The next day, 24 hours later, something bad happens, and Elijah forgets all about how good and powerful God was yesterday, and he runs for the hills, and he actually says, I wish I was dead. Just kill me, God, I can't take this. Either he thinks that I've done something wrong and now God's mad at me, or maybe this bad thing is happening. I don't know, I can't figure it out. I just I just want to die. Have you ever felt like that? Like this? It doesn't matter if God was good yesterday. I've got a problem today, and I'm not sure God will care about this one. I don't know if he's going to show up. I mean, thanks God for what you did for me yesterday. Why don't you care about me today? It doesn't feel like you care about me today. Yesterday's thing doesn't help me today. I need help today. Can anybody relate to that? And so Elijah sits down under this tree and takes a nap. Yeah, I can't deal with this. I'm just going to bed. You may feel like that. So let's just pick up the story. We're in verse 5 now. He says, so Elijah lays down and he slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. And Elijah looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and drank, and then he went back to sleep again, right? And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, arise and eat. And this is important, for the journey is too great for you. And Elijah arose and ate and drank and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, that's another mountain, the mountain of God. Now, I want us to pay attention to what's really going on here. And again, the whole point is he's just like us, right? No halos, no special Bible, qualifications. He's just a guy who's going through a really, really hard time. So see if you can relate to any of this, all right? Elijah has just come off of a big deal. He's just kind of come off of an emotionally, spiritually, and physically challenging event the day before. And even though his side won and God did something great in his life, here's what Elijah's feeling. He's exhausted. He's exhausted. I'm done. I'm worn out. And why is he exhausted? Because everything that he did the day before, emotionally and spiritually, just like last week we talked about this, he did in his physical body, and bodies get tired, and they have to get rest, and they have to be refilled, even if what exhausted them was doing something good. Well, let's put that in the spiritual formation language we've been kind of using over the last month in here. How about this? Elijah just lived out his spiritual, just like you, non-bodily, you couldn't cut it open and find it, right? He lived out his spiritual, non-bodily, personal power, but it was lived out through a physical, gets tired, gets hungry body, and unless something changes in that body, he's not getting up from the tree, right? So he's done. I am tired. I'm hungry. I'm worn out. I'm just stressed. And you got to get this, all right? God lets him take a nap. God lets him sleep, and then at a certain point, he wakes him up and goes, you need something to eat and drink, and now get some more rest, and then later, he wakes him up and says, you need to eat some more. You need something else to drink. And this is what he tells him. This is my paraphrase of it, but this is exactly what God told Elijah through this angel. He says this, hey, Elijah, if you don't take care of your physical body, you're not going to make it spiritually or emotionally, because the journey, and God knows what's coming next, the journey, it's going to be too hard. Now, let's just take a time out here, right here, and let's make an application, maybe find a training even, that we can apply this for our own lives, okay? Here's what I want you to hear about Elijah, okay? He's not a weak man. Elijah's not this whiny, prophet. Elijah, I'd call him a warrior prophet. I mean, what he did yesterday, he slaughtered or oversaw the slaughter of 400 men just 24 hours ago. He's a mountain man. If you read other stories about him, he lives in the desert. As a matter of fact, like in the New Testament, some people, they look at a guy named John the Baptist, who's like the biblical version of like Bear Grylls, or they look at Jesus, who's a construction worker, who was so strong, they beat him almost to death, and he was still able to carry a cross up a hill, all right? They look at Jesus and John and go, are you like Elijah, this really strong man that lived 800 years ago? Are you like Elijah reincarnated? He wasn't weak. He was tired. He was worn out. And here's the first application. When you're physically worn out, it affects you mentally, emotionally, and what's that word? Spiritually. When you're worn out physically, it affects everything else. What's going on in your head, what's going on in your heart, and what's going on in your spirit. And so what's God tell Elijah to do? Hey, buddy, take a nap. No, how about this? Take a couple of naps and eat something. Eat some good food. Now, this is deep. This is really, really deep philosophy, if you want to call it, but you're going to agree with it, but you're also going to go, but I ignore it. Here's the truth. Listen, it's hard for tired people to hear from God, isn't it? It's hard for tired people to hear from God. How about this? It's hard for tired people to have the mind of Christ. We say we want to have the mind of Christ. I want to think like Jesus. When you're worn out, you don't think like Jesus. How about this? It's hard for tired people to have anything to offer to anyone that's actually good or helpful. I don't have anything to give you. I'm tired. How about this? It's hard for tired people to love, isn't it? We want to. We just don't have anything left. I was talking to my friend James down in Mexico City this week, and he said, Jim, when I get really, really tired and just at the end of everything, the first thing that I throw overboard in my life is that whole 1 Corinthians 13 thing. Right? And so 1 Corinthians 13 is part of a letter Paul wrote to some people who live in Corinth, but like in modern times, we've just looked at that one chapter, and we call it the love chapter, because it's all the things that a loving person does. And what James is going is, when I get tired, not so much. Let's just look at some of the lines from this chapter. Paul writes this: love is patient and kind. Not when you're on my last nerve. I am not patient and not kind. The next line goes like this: love does not envy or boast. It does when I'm tired. I will get in your face. Love is not arrogant or rude. Oh, when I'm tired, mean and rude is like my job. I mean, I get an A in mean and rude. How about this? It does not insist on its own way. Oh, you haven't been around me when I'm tired. Because when I'm tired, it's to shut up and do what I said. I don't care about your opinion. I don't want to hear from you. Just do it. Love is not irritable or resentful. Irritable? Hey, let's just apply this to our own lives and our own situation. Wouldn't you say, and I asked my staff earlier, and they all just nodded their heads at me, wouldn't you say that, I don't know, the last 50 fights that you've had with your family or your friends or something like that, if it ever got to that, okay, let's make up phase, somewhere in there it included the line, I'm sorry, I just had a bad day and I was really tired. And I just took it out on you. So here's the application, the training exercise for week number 1. This may be the best thing you've ever heard in church, but I believe it's from God. And here it is. Hey, this week, take more naps and eat better food. How about that? Can I get an amen? Someone, all right? Right? I mean, take a nap and eat some good food. Now, let me explain this, why I believe this is from God, or let me just build a case for the link between our physical rest and our health and our spiritual health and expressing that and what comes out of us, all right? First of all, again, you might not know all of them, but you know some of the 10 commandments, and one of those commandments is take one day out of the week and just rest. Just take a day off, all right? Take a day off, just be with God, let Him fill you back up. That's called the Sabbath, all right? Take a Sabbath day at least once a week and just rest and fill yourself up. Later, all right, so Jesus actually, he's having a conversation with some people that are criticizing him for what he did on the Sabbath. And he goes, listen, time out. The reason God gave us a Sabbath, it's to serve us. It's for our good. It's not a rule that we keep one day out of the week, because God gets something out of it. God doesn't get something out of us resting. God knows that unless He makes it a rule for our life, I'm telling you, take a day off. He knows us. We'll run ourselves into the ground. And so God commands you and me to, on a regular basis, take a nap, eat some food, and just take a breath. God commands it. The other thing we learn from Jesus says this, and we've talked about this a lot in here, is that whatever you do on the outside is just an overflow of whatever is going on or what is stored up on the inside. So whatever's stored up on the inside is what comes out. And so the application would be, if you're empty on the inside because you haven't taken time to fill yourself up, physically or spiritual, you have nothing good to give. You're going to make it up, or just some stuff's going to come out the wrong way or sideways. Jesus was the king of taking days off. I don't know if you've read his story much. I mean, all the time he's going, hey, time out, let's just go away. Let's just take a break. Let's just go to the mountains, go hiking. Let's go fishing, especially like after big events. So there's times when Jesus would do something, and in the middle of it, he'd go, that's enough, let's go fishing, or let's just go to the mountains and just kick back for a while. And his friends would actually look at him and go, excuse me, Jesus, have you not noticed there's a lot of hungry people here, and there's a lot of sick people here, and we should probably do that after all the work is done. And you know what Jesus said? There will always be more to do. There will always be more to do. The job's never going to get done. There will always be people who need fed. There will always be sick people who need healed. And there's going to be people in crisis who need my help. I know. Now get in the boat. Get in the boat, and we're going to go fishing. And it wasn't because Jesus didn't care about the hungry people or the sick people or that couple over there in crisis. That's not it at all, right? It's not because he didn't care. He knew this. If we're going to do this for a long time, and that's the plan. We're not going to do this for a day or a week. We're going to do this for a long time. If we're going to be able to keep going, then we got to take a breath. We've got to get some rest and take a breath. So let's go fishing. And they get in a boat. One time they get in a boat and they're like, okay, Lord. And they get in a boat and they go out in the middle of the lake, and this big storm hits, and they're like, see, this is bad advice, Jesus. We shouldn't have taken a day off. We should have stayed up there on dry land. And you know where Jesus was in the middle of the storm? Remember the story? He was in the bottom of the boat. You know what he was doing? Taking a nap. He was actually taking a nap. Listen, again, and we all know this is true. There will always be more to do, and there will always be people in your life wanting more and more and more and more stuff from you. But unless you're better than Jesus, smarter than Jesus, and stronger than Jesus, then you and I, we have to intentionally find times to take a breath and rest and take care of ourselves. As a matter of fact, I would say this. One of the most loving things that you can do for the people in your life that you say, I love them. I'm their dad, I'm their provider, I'm their protector, I'm their mom, I'm their grandma, whatever it is, but I'm in a place of responsibility over them, and I love them. The most loving thing you could do for them is to do what needs to be done for yourself so that you actually have something to give them. I don't know if it's American work ethic or it got all screwed up or whatever, but it may feel noble for a lot of us to fall into bed every night, exhausted because we gave it all for everybody in our life. But I'm telling you, just like Elijah, a day is going to come when the alarm's going to go off in the morning and you're not going to be able to get out of bed. You're done. And everybody loses. You lose, and then the people that are counting on you, they lose too. I'll even say it in a stronger way. How about this? Your family and your friends don't need a martyr to die for them. They've got Jesus, all right? They don't need you going, oh, I'll die for you. No. You know what the people in your life that you love need from you? They need a spiritually, emotionally, and physically healthy you to be alive for them for a long time. And so training exercise number one is find a little bit of time. Every day, just a little bit of time, and at least one extended time in the next week. Ready? And don't do anything. Do nothing except sleep in or take a nap or eat some good food or have some good drinks. Just do something good. And if someone questions you and goes, well, I just think you're being lazy, then just tell them, God told me. I'm trying to hear from God, and God told me to take a nap. Deal with it. And it's from God. It's God's will for our lives. So that's the first application. You can leave now if you want, but there's another one, and it's just as good, but... So let's go back to the story. Elijah, all right, so he's just taking a couple of naps, he's eating some good food, and he goes 40 days into the desert because God tells him, just go there, right? And so he comes to this cave, and when he gets to this cave, he's still tired and worn out because he's just done, right? And he starts actually doing what I do a lot. He just starts yelling at God, complaining about, all the good things I've done it right, I did what you told me to do, and you know what happened, God? Everybody hates me. Everybody's turned on me. Everybody's turned on you. Like I'm the only one left. Nobody even cares about you. I don't even know what's the point, all right? And he's actually hoping that God will either kill him or how about this? Hey, can you just do what you did like 6 weeks ago back there with those cows on the piles of rocks on that one mountain where you showed up and did something big? Will you just do that again? Will you send fire from heaven and put everybody in their place? But this time, as Elijah's going, hey, God, do something big. You know what Elijah gets from God? Nothing, right? And then he does what you and I do a lot when we just hear silence. We go, hey, God, are you there and do you care? And you need to take care of this, all right? He begins to question the whole God thing. Is this worth it or not? I mean, come on, God, say something. Give me a sign. I remember being a kid one time and I'm going, God, I just need to know you're there. Like move that pencil, something. I just need a sign to know that you're there. Give me something, God. A voice, a burning bush, something. He gets nothing for a long time. And finally, a voice comes to him, and I don't know if it's an angel or God speaking through an angel or God himself. He just hears this one little directive from God. Doesn't explain anything at all. He just gets this one little directive from God. And here's what God says. God says, go out and stand on the mount before the Lord. So he's in a cave. Go outside and just stand there. And behold, the Lord passed by. And look what happens, all right? So he's standing there at the entrance of a cave, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. So this isn't like a little breeze. This is like hurricane force, all right? But the Lord, look at this. The Lord was not in the wind. Send me something big. Wind. I got nothing. And then after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. That's big. Is that you, God? I got nothing. And then after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. God asked for something big, and I'm still not hearing you. What's wrong with me or what's wrong with you? But the fire goes by. After the fire, the sound of a low whisper. In some translations, and I actually like this other translation better, right? The sound of sheer silence. Have you ever heard sheer silence? He's like, well, there's nothing to hear. I know, it's overwhelming, isn't it? The sound of sheer silence. And when Elijah heard the sheer silence, he wrapped his face in his cloak, and he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, next, there came a voice to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? And this time Elijah goes right back into the same speech about, I'm tired and I've done everything right and nobody cares, and is this working, and I don't understand why you're not doing something. But now, at this point, after all of this, God knows now you're ready to listen. Before you were tired and worn out, and all you wanted to do is yell at God and complain. And let's time out. And we all have times like that. Yeah, I think God is pretty tough. I think he understands us. We all have times like this. So God doesn't get mad at Elijah for complaining. He doesn't lecture him, tell him you should have more faith. And did you not pay attention to what I did 6 weeks ago on that mountain? And where's your faith? No. This is what happens. God just patiently and silently waits until Elijah is ready to hear him, right? God just waits patiently and silently until Elijah's ready to listen. And I don't like that answer. But let me ask you this, all right? If you were to imagine or picture God speaking to you, or giving you a word or a revelation about what he is commanding you to do in this part of your life, so if God's going to speak to you, how do you picture it happening? Like how do you hope, or in your mind go, if God would just speak to me this way, because I immediately go to, give me a big sign. Like when I was a little kid, like once a year, we'd also watch this big 10 Commandments movie with Charlton Heston, all right? And then Moses was out there on the mountain, and so if God was going to speak to me, I'd be like that. I'd go up on a mountain, and I'd put my hands up, and the wind would be blowing, there'd be lightning and thunder and stuff like that, and then this voice that sounds very similar to Morgan Freeman would come out of heaven and say, Jim, here's what I'm telling you to do, and he would tell me something that human ears had never heard before. That's what you ought to do, God, right? Here's the truth, again, is the more I study this whole hearing God and all these people that have heard from God in the Bible and even people in my life that I trust, in all those, big, like, God moments where people go, I heard from God, typically, this is true. The more dramatic the message or the way it comes, look at the more immature the recipient. It has to get really dramatic because you're not in a place where you can hear anything else except dramatic. I mean, again, if you look through the stories, I've mentioned some of them already, it's like Moses got a burning bush, and a voice spoke out and said, go let my people go, and stuff like that. He only got that one time. And he had 40, 50 more years with God. After that, it was just a conversation, an ongoing conversation. Or how about this? God split the heavens. It says he split the heavens, and a voice came out of heaven at Jesus' baptism. It happened again at one other time called the Mount of Transfiguration when Jesus is up there with a couple of his buddies, and the heavens split and a voice came out of heaven. But that's twice in Jesus' whole life. After that, Jesus heard from God his Father in quiet times, in quiet, or the Bible says lonely places. Let's just go to the mountains. I just need to be alone so I can hear God. Or Paul, we talk about this guy named Paul a lot in the Bible. He wrote a lot of the last third of the Bible. He was actually on his way to a city to actually kill a bunch of Christians, and a light came out of heaven, and he got blind, and he blinded him, and he fell on the ground, and he heard Jesus' voice one time. And after that, he described his relationship or his conversation with God as, I have the mind of Christ. I've actually spent enough time with him. I actually think like him. I don't need a light out of heaven anymore. I have the mind of Christ. Or here, probably one of the most famous stories in the whole Bible, the prodigal son story, right? Here's a kid who runs away from home and screws up his life, and he's finally living in a pig pen. You know what? He didn't get a big sign. An angel didn't appear to him in a pig pen. A light didn't come out of heaven. Jesus didn't walk across the mud and go home, something like that. No. He says he just remembered. He remembered. He came to his senses, and he remembered, my dad is better than this. It wasn't dramatic. It was just like, I forgot. Now we have Elijah here. Elijah says, God, make the world shake. Send fire from heaven. Do what you did that other time. Do that again. But God spoke. Look at this. God spoke in the utter silence. So sometimes, and this is how I grew up. God spoke in a still, small voice. And here's what I found in my own life, and I think I'm speaking for most of us. My life is so noisy. I can't hear anything still or small. I mean, sometimes I feel like it's going to take an earthquake for me to pay attention. And if it's not an earthquake, I will miss it. So if the earthquake doesn't happen, I just go like, well, God must not be talking because I can't hear him. But there's so much noise in my life. Anybody else? But do you remember, let's go back to the story about Elijah. Do you remember what Elijah did? All right, remember this? Here's what we covered. He got some rest. He filled himself up, so he was physically in a good place. Physically, now I'm actually ready. I'm rested. I'm full. I'm healthy. That was the first. I'm not going to hear God unless that's happening. But here's the second thing he did. He physically got up from where he was and put himself in a physical place where he could hear God if God decided to speak to him. Right? He was in the cave, and he said, okay, I want to hear from God. And then he went, and he stood in a place and went, okay, I'm here. I'm listening. Do you have anything to say to me? Now, here's reality. God can speak to us anywhere. Underwater, outer space, in the middle of a busy intersection in our car, at home, whatever that is. God can speak to us anywhere. There are some places where we can hear God better than other places. That's on us. And maybe that shouldn't be. Maybe we should be so mature spiritually that we can hear from God anywhere all day long. And maybe with enough training, we will get to that place. But for now, what are we going to do? And so here's a question. It's kind of an application training question, but it goes like this. Where's a place where you could go, or what is something that you could do, and I'm talking about physically do, all right, to increase the likelihood of you hearing from God? Is there a place where you go going, I think if I just got away from this and went to that place, or if I did this different, maybe I could hear from God. Now, let's be honest. I always talk about going to the cabin, or going to the mountains, going to Africa, something like that. We can't do that all the time. I need to hear from God. I got to, quit my job and go to the mountains, or I have to go on a special, 40-day retreat every time I want to hear from God. All right, but we can find a quiet place where we can hear better, where we can think. But it's not going to happen on accident. We have to want it, and again, it's not just I want it. Is then we have to have a strategy. We have to intentionally go and do it. And you don't have to go to the mountains. I'll give you an example. One thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hear from God. And again, James is like a spiritual director to me down in Mexico City, and he's taught me a couple of things. One of the things I do, I can do this in my office, and I've done it in my office. I've done it on my back patio, and I've done it by a creek in the mountains. All right, it's symbolic. It doesn't mean anything except to me. Is that like this is my life? This is the chaos, this is the noise of my life. And I'll actually take my toe and I'll like draw an imaginary line, and then I'll step into a different space. It's the entrance to the cave. Okay, I got him here. I have to go back there later, but right now I'm here, and I came to meet with you. And I'll start by saying stuff like that, like, hey, God, look at me. Look at me. All right. There's some stuff I want to tell you. There's some stuff I want to say to you. There's some stuff I want to ask from you. But how about this? Before I even get into my agenda, anytime that I'm here with you right now, I'm going to ask you, will you bring me whatever it is you want? Want to tell me, want to show me, if you want to help me remember, whatever that is. So I have an agenda, God. I'll be honest with you. I need some help in my direction, but I'm just coming over here and just going, hey, is there anything you want to bring me? I'm listening. You know, the other thing that helps me hear from God is it's scary. It scares me. It's really hard for me to do. And every time I do it, it takes like some length of time for me to detox from what I'm walking away from, and that is be quiet. I'm not good at being quiet. I'm not. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. I mean, from the time my alarm goes off in the morning, all right, and I get up, and then I usually check, social media or like see if anybody followed me on Twitter or whatever that is, all right. But I get up and then I turn the TV on, or I get in the truck and I put on music, and then I get to the gym and I put on earbuds, and then even in the steam room I have earbuds on and I'm listening to music while I'm trying to pray, but I just can't have any silence in my life. And then when I'm at the office, it's just nonstop noise and stuff like that. I try to shut my door sometimes, but people knock on it, and then I go home and there's Robin and she wants to talk, and that's a good thing. But and baseball's on and all that kind of stuff, and then it's finally time for bed. I turn 2 fans on in my bedroom just to have that white noise because I just don't want quiet. Quiet freaks me out. It really does. It's like when it's like quiet, like that sheer silence that we're talking about there, my mind starts racing. I start thinking about stuff, and it just goes crazy. I'm like, what about this, and what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And then I also, here's the scariest part of it, when it's really quiet, I feel really alone. Like, I guess with noise around me and music playing and stuff like that, it distracts me from the fact that I'm by myself. But when there's nothing there, I feel absolutely like vulnerable and exposed and alone. And that sounds really scary or sad, whatever you want. But here's what I've found in those moments. It's not until I sit in a quiet place, usually for a while by myself, that I begin to actually experience the reality that Jesus is right here. My life is so noisy. Jesus may be there, but there are layers and layers of stuff between me and him. It's really hard to hear him. It's hard to even believe he's there because there's just so much noise. So here's training exercise number 2, and it kind of looks like this. Would it be possible for you every day? And if 5 minutes is like, oh, no, I couldn't start with 5, then 1, all right? Whatever that is, maybe then next week 2, I don't know. But for 5 minutes a day, could you sit in total silence? You don't understand what it's like at my house. Then go get in your car in the garage and shut the door, right? Or go sit on the toilet. I don't know. Go take a walk. Put earmuffs on. I don't know. Go sit in your basement and disappear for 5 minutes, all right? But could you just sit in total silence? And in that silence, actually, and I was going to use the word like imagine, but imagination and creativity is from God, so you're not imagining something false, but can you just kind of picture that Jesus like is right there with you? Could you do that for 5 minutes? When was the last time you had 5 minutes of silence while you were awake? But what if you brought some intentionality and said, for 5 minutes, I'm just going to sit here in the basement or sit here in my car before I go in the house or before I pull out in the morning and go to work and face the chaos of the day. Before I turn the car on, before I turn the lights on, whatever that is, I'm going to sit here for 5 minutes and go, gee, you're here, right? And you don't have to ask for anything. You don't have to tell him anything. A guy named Brother Lawrence would say, just practice his presence. I'm just going to practice believing you're right there. You don't have to say anything. I just want to sit with you and just see what happens. The closest thing, and again, this may sound weird to some of us, but I've never heard audibly, I've never heard God's voice. I've never seen, angels. I've never had a vision, a prophetic, all that stuff that, people, I guess, more spiritual than me have had. I've never had that. The closest thing I've ever had to a vision was I was sitting on a floor one day, and I was just trying to be quiet and still and just picture the face of Jesus. And the closest thing I ever had to a vision was in that moment. And I didn't leave my body, and I didn't float above the room, and I didn't do that, right? But all of a sudden, I had this picture in my mind that I was sitting in the mountains, leaning against a pine tree, and Jesus was right here. And the only thing I got out of that vision was, and he loves me a lot. And even in my vision, I wanted to turn around and catch him. But I didn't dare. I don't want to ruin this. So I just, for a few minutes, I just sat there going, he's right there. And he really loves me. He didn't tell me anything. I just knew. So I'm done, probably out of time, but I want to give you one more exercise, and this is the one that's going to maybe feel the most awkward, but it helps get me in a place before I even pray sometimes, or before I actually go, okay, God, I'm ready to listen. So a couple times over the last couple of years, I've gotten together with James down in Mexico City, and then my friend Simon over in Nairobi, and we'll get together as leaders, and we try to hear from God, what God's teaching each one of us, and what God has revealed to us, and then we share that with the other guys. So we were in Mexico City almost a year ago, and James taught me this on a retreat. And it's a form of contemplative prayer and meditation. And time out, that just freaks some of you out, right? Oh, are we allowed to do that? I heard some people do that, and they fill their mind with stuff, and then the voices come. Listen, take a breath. Let me give you one Dallas Willard quote. You thought you were going to get out of here with that one, okay? I think it might be one of the best things he ever said. He said this, just because a Buddhist eats breakfast doesn't mean I'm not going to eat breakfast. I think that's pretty good. Right, you just fill in the blank there, an atheist or a Satanist or whatever. Just because they do it doesn't mean I'm going to do it. Breakfast isn't intrinsically bad. Meditation is not intrinsically bad. It depends on what you're trying to fill your mind up with. I heard another guy, Randy Harris. He said it this way: I'm not shopping for new theology. I believe in Jesus. I'm looking for best practices so I can connect with Him better. And if I can take it from there or there or there, and it brings me closer to Jesus, I'm going to do it. And sometimes I'm an experiential person. I'm an outside processor. You probably picked up on that. I need to do something physically on the outside in order to connect spiritually with God on the inside. And so James taught me about this practice by this guy named Bernardo of Clairvaux. So he's this French monk, all right? He called it the 4 degrees of love. Right? This is something to take a picture, but I've tried this. I don't do it all the time, but there's these different degrees of love, and then there's a posture that goes with them. And I've done this. I do it after dark on my back patio because my neighbors would call 911. He's doing it again. So the degrees of love. The first degree of love is this: is love of self for self's sake. Love of self, and that seems kind of egotistical. No, right? Love your neighbor as you love your. So unless you actually appreciate who you are and the value that you are enough and that you are a good man, good woman, you don't do everything perfectly, but that God has created you, something like that. And so the first one is going, I'm me. I'm me. And so the posture for that is I stand on my back porch, all right? And somebody's going to be spying on over my fence, and I'll call the cops, and I have guns. But anyway, but I just do this. I'm pointing in. I'm a good man. I'm a good man. God made me, and I'm a good man. So there's parts about me I love. I love that I'm trying to be a good husband and a good leader and a good dad. I love that. So I don't come with a bunch of shame and guilt and condemnation. Hey, God, it's me. No. There's good things about me. I love me. And so, God, here I am, and I'm me. All right, just as I am. That's the first degree of love, so I'm pointing in. The second degree of love goes like this: love of God for self's sake. Meaning this is, God, I love you because, honestly, you do some good stuff in my life, all right? So the first posture is like this. The second one is like this: God, I love you because of what you've done for me. You've sent Jesus to me. You forgive me. You're listening to me right now. I can sit on my back patio right now and talk to you. I need some stuff from you. And so the first posture of love is this: I love me. God, I love you because of what you do for me. All right? And that's just honest. Can we just be honest? The reason we love God so much is He can do some good stuff in our life. So let's just be honest about it. I love me. God, I love you for what you do to me. The third degree of love would be this: I love God because of who He is. I love God for God's sake. But now it's this: God, I just praise you. I love you because of who you are. You made the heavens and the skies. You're the kind of God who took on flesh and came to earth to tell me what you were like. You want me to be in your kingdom. I mean, I love you for you. This is what we do in worship a lot of times during the singing parts of our service. I love you for you. I remember who you are, and you're great and you're mighty. So I love me, and I love you for what you do for me, and I love you because of who you are. And then the fourth degree is this: I love me for you. Does that make sense? Love of self for God's sake. So I love me because of who I am. God, I love you for what you do in my life. I love you just because you're amazing. And now here's my love. I love me and I give you all of me, and I bow and worship to you, and I surrender. I want to see things the way you see them. I want to think the way you think. I want to have the mind of your son, Jesus. I love me because I'm running after good things. I love you for what you're doing in my life. I love you because you're just amazing. And I love me to the point that I want to give myself to you. I want to be like you. I want to worship you. And that's it. So we're going to take more naps. We're going to eat better food. We're going to find a quiet place and just picture Jesus being with us. And then we're going to approach God in a new way. God, I'm a good man. You're doing good things in my life because you're amazing, and I worship you. Now I'm ready to hear from you. Then sit down on your back porch and have a cold drink and have a conversation. And just see, all right? See if any of that opens up a line of communication where you are fully awake, fully present, in a quiet place, in a conversational relationship with Jesus. He's right there with you. So God, there are so many of us right now going, oh, I want that. Is that possible for an ordinary person like me? Because God, usually we don't come to you going, I love me and I love what you do and I love you. Well, obviously we love you, but we usually approach you going, I'm sorry and I have shame and I have guilt and I know I don't have a right to even ask for any help or something like that. And God, you look at us and go, whoa, you're my child. I love you. I've done everything I've done so that you and I could talk and be friends and live in a conversational relationship every moment of the day. You don't have to apologize to come in to me. I know that's your message for us today, God. And so if you could just help us not feel selfish when we just need to sit down for a while, but realize that you created our bodies and you created bodies that have to rest and eat. And somehow we think that we can just keep on going. And then we get mad at ourselves and we get mad at you when we just don't have anything left to give. And you tell us, you command us, take a breath, take a nap, and fill yourself up. And God, you are not responsible for all the noise in our life. We have brought so much of that on ourselves. And we can't like put our kids, on a shelf or suspend reality. But I believe, God, because I know it's what you want for our lives. It is possible to find a few minutes here and a few minutes there just to be still and remember that you're right here with us. So God, I pray and I ask as your son that you would provide us with the awareness to look around in our life and go, there's some quiet time and I'm gonna leverage it. And God, maybe even later tonight, when everybody's in bed, maybe we just slip out on the back patio and we just say, God, that's me. I'm a good man, trying to be a good man. I love you because of who you are. I'm trying to be a good mom. God, I'll never be a good mom without your help. And I just worship you, God, because you're good and great. And now I just bow myself and I just want to hear from you because I want to think like you and I want the same things you want. And God, if we could even just start just once or twice, but I think we're going to get addicted to it because I think being with you is what we were created to do, and we've been missing it for so long. If we could just get a taste, it's all we'll want, and it's all we need. And that alone will fill us up. So God, we love you for who you are, and we want to think like you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.